What do you say, everybody? And thank you for joining us on a Sunday night with Andrew Bone and Chris Daughtry. I'm Mick Gillespie, and you are at the site you're going to want to be at for the next, hour or so, and hang out here and talk Alabama recruiting. Early signing period is on Wednesday, and we're going to break it all down for you. This is the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. Hit the thumbs up. Hit the bell. Be part of what we do. Last night, we were here for the Heisman. We had Jay Barker join us. He was at the Heisman as a player. He knows all about it. And tonight we bring on the guru of recruiting, Andrew Bone, to kind of get ready for Wednesday and what is going on. But first, Bone, great to see you, my friend. How's it going?
It's going good. Just been busy today, talking to a lot of different coaches, players, parents, just trying to get the lowdown on what's going on over the course of the next few days, because there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of key targets who are still out there. Even some who are, probably don't know where they're going as of tonight. They're getting home from either visits or, state championships, and they're sitting home with their families and trying to make this decision that's going to affect them for the next 40 years. So it's going to be an interesting finish to the finish line. There's been so many different guys we've talked about throughout the entire year. Most of those guys we're still talking about. So, that means Alabama has, kept themselves relevant in the race for a lot of these guys. But, there's a couple new names that have entered the mix here recently as well. So be interesting to kind of see how it all unfolds, but it usually unfolds pretty well for the Crimson Tide.
Yep. Last year, number one recruiting class, something Nick Saban has done a lot. Last night, Bone, I want to get your take on this first. Let's talk about the 2021 Heisman Trophy winner, Bryce Young. The recruitment of Bryce Young, your thoughts on him winning the Heisman, the fact that he was getting offers as an eighth grader?
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that he has been a kid that a lot of schools were interested in very early on in his recruitment, and Alabama was certainly a top contender in his recruitment early on. But he committed to USC, and he's committed to USC for a long time. Of course, we had a feeling that once he visited Alabama again, things were going to really open up for the Crimson Tide. It's kind of interesting. The last couple quarterbacks that have come through Alabama, you had Jake Fromm, who was committed to Alabama for a long time, and he ends up decommitting and flipping to Georgia. That opened up the door for Tua and Mac Jones. So Alabama ends up trading Jake Fromm to Georgia for Tua and Mac Jones. And then Alabama gets this quarterback commitment before his junior season in Carson Beck, who ends up flipping from Alabama to Georgia. And Alabama ends up getting Bryce Young as his replacement. So it's been kind of crazy how that's worked out, and it has worked out really well for Alabama. I think that Bryce was obviously the number one recruit in the country, 5-star quarterback, number one quarterback recruit. Him and DJ Uiagalelei were the top two quarterbacks in the country during their senior year. They both played in the same division in California, which is crazy. They grew up together. They played together at an early age, and then obviously they end up playing at rival high schools. But Bryce has been a pretty spectacular football player at Alabama. Obviously, watching him win the Heisman is obviously the culmination of his career so far. And I certainly think that he's going to have a chance to continue to build on that. I mean, that's not it. That's not it for Bryce Young. That's not the end of his road. I mean, he's got a whole nother year at Alabama. He's got the playoffs coming up. I mean, this is a special kid, and he's very humble. We talked about it earlier this season. If you remember, there were all these people that were coming out, and I think it was just people, maybe they were just jealous, I guess. I don't know what it was, but they were saying, oh, well, the Alabama football players, they probably are going to be jealous of Bryce Young because of his $1 million NIL deals. If it was that much, who knows? But I'm sure it's a lot more now. But people were saying that, no way the team would rally behind him. And you saw last night all the different players, all his teammates, whether that's wide receivers, offensive linemen, defensive players. They couldn't have been happier for what they saw when Bryce Young won the Heisman. So I think that says a lot about his character, who he is as a person, and you got to give his parents a lot of credit, because I think they really did a good job of raising him, and it was really awesome to see. Alabama wins its fourth Heisman Trophy during the Nick Saban era, and obviously fourth overall. We used to just talk about championships. Yeah, people used to talk about I remember growing up, and it was all about, oh, well, Alabama has 12 national championships, but they don't have any Heisman Trophy winners. And now you have all these Heisman Trophy winners, plus a lot more championships that have been added to the trophy case. So it's been a pretty special run, and looking forward to seeing who's going to be that next big star.
Yeah, really. Yesterday, you mentioned Bryce Young's dad, him and Bryce both sporting the turtleneck with the blazer. Kyle brought that up a couple of shows ago. So is that a style that you're going to move forward with now that the Youngs have kind of taken the nation with the resurgence of the turtleneck?
I mean, they make it look good. I don't know if I can pull that off, but they certainly were sharp. They look great, and I'm sure it's going to start a pretty good trend.
Well, congratulations to Bryce Young and winning the Heisman. With his recruitment, I mean, you kind of got into it before. He was going to go to USC, right? And then he comes to Alabama. Was there ever a point before he signed that once he kind of committed to going to Alabama that you thought maybe he was going to dip out and go somewhere else? And was he one of those guys that helped recruit other players to the Crimson Tide?
Yeah, Bryce, when he flipped to Alabama, we kind of knew it was going to come. I talked to his dad back in the spring, and also during the summer, and they just kept telling me, hey, we're going to make a trip to Tuscaloosa, and once we make that trip to Tuscaloosa, that's going to indicate that we're flipping from USC to Alabama. And so they kind of kept things quiet and let kind of the season play out. And I think it was I want to say it was like October, and they ended up reaching out to me, telling me that they were going to come in for the official visit, which I knew what that meant. I knew that meant a decommitment was about to happen, and it did. I mean, it happened immediately. I think it actually happened before the trip actually happened. So, USC kept trying to fight, kept trying to get him back in the fold at the last minute. There were some really deep conversations with USC that last week before during the early signing period. They had some deep conversations with USC, but in the end, they felt like Alabama was the best place for him and best place to help him develop into the guy that he is today. And a few years later, he's a Heisman Trophy winner.
Yep, and an SEC champion. So let's change gears. And guys, for those of you that are hanging out with us tonight, like and subscribe, hit the bell. Thank you for being here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel as we talk recruiting with early signing day on Wednesday. Comment section. Appreciate it, guys. Keep on throwing the comments in there. Of course, we always appreciate the super chats. Thank you for hanging out with us on a Sunday night. All right. Let's get into this Alabama recruiting now. You're talking about 2 weeks. You're talking about Alabama kind of coming in with some momentum here for this recruiting class. And as you look at things right now, give me a quick overview of the recruiting class.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Alabama's class right now, number 2 recruiting class in the country, and I'd be shocked if they don't end up in the top 3. I mean, I think it's, kind of a, musical chairs. Who's going to finish with that, number 1 recruiting class between Alabama, Georgia, and Texas A&M. I mean, there's a lot of targets that are in play for each one of those programs, and each one has a chance to add some really good players over the course of the next few days. But I mean, I think once you look at Alabama's class, overall from a standpoint, I mean, there's 10 Rivals 100 players in this class. And that's 10 of the top 100 players in the country. That's pretty impressive, for the Crimson Tide. Everybody always says, "Oh, well, it's Alabama. It's easy to recruit." It's not easy to recruit. It's, you're recruiting against, schools that are itching to be the next Alabama. You're recruiting against schools that are telling all these different players you're not going to play until you're a junior or you're a senior. There's 5 stars at this position and that position. You're this coach, because he's a good coach, a coordinator or a position coach, he's probably going to get a head coaching job somewhere. This coordinator or this position coach, he's going to get a coordinator job somewhere. He's going to leave. He won't be there. But at the end of the day, it's still Nick Saban. It's still Alabama. It's still the national championships. It's the All-Americans. It's the development. It's everything that comes along with the University of Alabama. And that's why, so many people, so many top players from all across the country want to go to Alabama. But at the end of the day, it's not for everybody, because you're going there to work, you're going there to develop, you're going there to compete at the highest level. And I talked to Tyler Booker, who's an Alabama offensive line commitment. When he made his commitment to Alabama, what he said was, iron sharpens iron. You're going up against a first round draft pick on the he's an offensive lineman. You're going up against first round draft picks on the defensive line, guys who are going to be playing in the NFL every single day. So it's hard. It's not easy to go to Alabama. It's really hard. So that's something that Alabama, that's one thing that makes them who they are. And that's what I think a lot of kids want to be. That's why a lot of kids want to be there. So what's going to happen over the course of the next few days, we're just going to have to see. But the guys who are currently in the class, they chose Alabama for a reason. It's because they want to compete against the best players every single day at practice. You look on the offensive side of the ball, you have an elite quarterback commitment in Ty Simpson. But the thing that stands out to me so much about Ty is Ty's always said he doesn't care if he plays his freshman year or if he's a 5th year. He says he knows if he goes to Alabama, he sits behind other quarterbacks, he's going to learn, he's going to develop, and he's going to potentially be the best player he can be. I mean, he watched Mac Jones go through that entire process. He watched Mac Jones stick it out. And you see what Mac Jones is now doing in the NFL. He's fine with that. And I think that says a lot about Ty, because we see so many quarterbacks these days that you don't start right away. You don't start when you're a freshman. Boom, you're in the transfer portal. These guys want to play immediately. And, hey, guess what? Everybody understands that. But there's also people that are willing to wait their turn, willing to develop. And, that's what Ty Simpson wants to do. I mean, I really like Alabama's, wide receiver and tight end class. I think it's pretty spectacular what they've been able to do. I mean, you have 4 Rivals 100 wide receivers and tight end in this class. So, I mean, that's a pretty special group right there. With Amari Knee-Black, Kobe Prentice, Aaron Anderson, Isaiah Bond. And then you have Jaleel Skinner, who's the number 102 player in the country. So you could pretty much call him a Rivals 100 kid. You've got a great offensive line class with Tyler Booker and Elijah Pritchett. Dane Shore is a kid that hasn't played in the last couple of years, so I think he probably needs some time to really, get back in football shape. He's been working out and training, but you gotta start hitting those pads again. You gotta start hitting other players, and and he'll get there. But it's probably gonna take a little bit of time for him to get back in the zone with that. Defensive class. I mean, I think that it's a pretty daggone good class. Especially at the linebacker position, led by Sean Murphy and Jeremiah Alexander. Defensive line class. Really like Jaheim Otis. I like his potential. The same with Isaiah Hastings. I mean, this Isaiah Hastings, a kid from Toronto, Canada, who's 6'5", 290 pounds. That a lot of people aren't talking about just because he didn't get noticed until his senior season. It's hard to get noticed when you don't have when Canada shuts down football during your junior season, and you have to you move down to the United States right before your senior year, so that schools will start noticing you. Alabama knows this guy and extended him an offer, and now he's a very intriguing prospect. But and then defensive back wise, man, there's still some big defensive back targets who are out there, but defensive back wise, I mean, you have some good commitments, especially in-state guys with Traquan Fagans and Antonio Kite. I really like Antonio Kite. This is a kid who was a star basketball player growing up, had basketball offers, but moved to football as a junior and really developed into one of the best high school football players, not only in the state, but in the entire country. So I think he's going to have a chance to really shine here in the next couple of years. You got to love those, kids that, move over from the basketball side of things to football because they're extremely athletic, have great ball skills, and certainly, I think he's going to have a chance to really be a good safety in Alabama's system. So overall, got a great class of, commitments right now. Still a couple that are, probably on the fringe that could end up going elsewhere, but overall, great class. And it's certainly not finished. I mean, there's some top guys that are going to be making decisions over the next couple of days. Talked to a few of those guys today, and it's going to be interesting to kind of see how it all unfolds in the end.
He's Andrew Bone. I'm Mick Gillespie. Guys, like and subscribe as you hang out with us here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Talking recruiting, Alabama trying to be the champs of recruiting again this year. And we'll find out how the early signing period goes on Wednesday. And don't forget, on Wednesday, we'll be with you all day long. All day long. You're going to see Bone. You're going to see Kyle. You're going to see me, Chris, Trey, the entire crew. And we are going to recruit. Even Tony will be on talking about this Alabama class. And each time someone signs, there'll be Bone to give you an update on how it happened and what they bring to the table. So make sure that you join us on Wednesday for our National Signing Day extravaganza. All right, Bone, look, this was the final recruiting weekend before early signing. Alabama had some big visitors in town. There was also a few surprise visitors who made their way to Tuscaloosa. Tell us about what happened in Titletown, recruiting-wise, this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty interesting weekend in Tuscaloosa because we knew about 6 guys that were coming into Tuscaloosa for official visits, mostly commitments, guys like Jeremiah Alexander, Emmanuel Henderson, Antonio Kite, Traquan Fagans. We weren't sure if there was going to be a surprise visitor or two that were going to make their way. Usually there is. We don't know about it until usually till the day of, and we actually didn't know until, I guess, the night of on Friday night. But, one of the key targets who was in town this weekend was Shaz Preston, Rivals 100 wide receiver, number 42 overall player in the country out of Louisiana. I actually had a chance to speak to his father earlier today about the overall weekend. And, it was just a great overall experience for them. Big decision coming up in the next couple of days. They're going to be announcing on Wednesday at around 2 p.m. So getting him on campus one more time, the final visit before he makes that decision, instead of going to LSU, because he was, LSU has been one of the schools that have been very high on his list. Coaching change at LSU, I think, affected that a little bit. Now, they tried to get him in for a visit this past weekend, canceled the visit to Alabama to come there, but he stuck it out, stuck with Alabama, ended up making the trip to Tuscaloosa. And, I think Alabama's going to have a great chance to land his commitment on Wednesday. I think Alabama, in my opinion, as of right now, I'd probably say they're in the driver's seat, but we know how that kind of changes over the course of, a couple of days leading up into that announcement. There's just a lot of pressure. There's a lot of recruiting. Kids may not be on campus, and it may be called the dead period on Monday to Wednesday, but it's not a dead period in terms of college coaches talking to you on the phone. They're going to be talking and recruiting you all the way until you sign that letter of intent. That doesn't change at all. I know that, a little confusing for some, but coaches are recruiting these guys all the way until the very end. So you just never know how it may unfold. But, in terms of some surprise visitors that Alabama had on campus this weekend, you had 2 guys from IMG Academy that we really did not have any idea that they were going to visit Alabama this weekend until they stepped foot on campus, and that was Jihad Campbell, an outside linebacker, and also Dalen Everett, a Rivals 100 defensive back, safety, cornerback. Can't play either, but these are 2 guys that made their trip to Tuscaloosa after decommitting from Clemson last week. I'm not really sure what's going to happen with either one of these guys over the course of the next couple of days. Campbell ended up making a trip over to Texas A&M on Saturday. Everett was actually in town for a couple days. He was in town Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So that's somebody that probably watching pretty closely, especially if Alabama ends up missing out on Demonte Jackson, 5-star defensive back. We'll talk about him in a second, but these are two very intriguing prospects that we're certainly keeping an eye on. There was one other guy that was supposed to visit Alabama this weekend. Somebody's already made a comment in the comment section about it, and that's Notre Dame commitment, Marion Walker. He ended up not making the trip to Tuscaloosa, so we're not really watching him anymore as a potential flip to Alabama. That was just kind of maybe he was going to visit, maybe not. Ended up not visiting, so not really watching. But another big target that was in town, and he's also a commitment, is Jaheim Oatis. Alabama was able to get Jaheim Oatis back in Tuscaloosa. It was actually the first time that he's visited since July, which is kind of surprising since he lives in Mississippi. There's been all these rumors over the course of the last couple months that he was going to flip to Ole Miss, that he was going to flip to Mississippi State. I don't see that happening. I think he's very solid with his commitment to Alabama. I expect him to sign with Alabama. I think Alabama coaches expect him to sign with Alabama next week. Now, we've seen this in Mississippi before. I mean, things are, a little tricky recruiting over there. Recruits tend to like to stay home, but with Jaheim Oatis, he's been committed to Alabama since the spring. I think he's very confident, very comfortable with the coaching staff, and I would be surprised if he ended up flipping. So that's kind of the overview of what all took place in Tuscaloosa this weekend. We all know that there was a lot of visits that happened elsewhere, whether that was Georgia, USC, LSU, Texas A&M. A lot of the other places had some big visitors on campus this weekend. So it's always good to get those kids on campus the last weekend before signing day. Of course, everyone just automatically assumes, oh, well, that's where they're going to go, and that's not always the case. Of course, I always bring up the story of Cyrus Kwanjo back, whatever that was, 2011. I can't remember the exact year, but he ended up committing to Auburn on National Signing Day on ESPN. He had taken that last trip to Auburn, a couple days before signing day. Family didn't go with him on the trip. His family just assumed he was going to Alabama. And you could tell when he announced on ESPN for Auburn that they were just stunned. They had no idea that, they'd never even been to Auburn. They never even knew that Auburn was a contender in his recruitment. And so I remember getting a call maybe like 10 minutes after the announcement. It already, ESPN had already cut it off. They said, this person who was there, she said, hey, I don't think he's signing with Auburn. I'm pretty sure he's signing with Alabama. Of course, we put something out there at the time, and everybody's like, oh, this is just an Alabama reporter, upset that, Auburn won this big recruiting battle, blah, blah, blah. Of course, he didn't sign. 3 days later, signs with Alabama. So we hadn't seen really anything like, there's some crazy things that happen in recruiting. That was probably one of the crazier ones. So you just never know what may happen.
Andrew Bone, Mick Gillespie here with you, talking Alabama recruiting as the Crimson Tide hope to have another number one recruiting class. Like and subscribe, guys. Hit the thumbs up as we talk to you live tonight here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Before we get into Demonte Jackson, Bone, I want to know what the impact is, or what you think the impact is going to be with so many other coaching staffs, surprisingly not Alabama this year, losing either assistants like what we saw at Clemson, where they lost their, I think, at least one coordinator, maybe both. And then obviously LSU with a new coach coming in, turmoil at Auburn where Mike Bobo was let go, their offensive coordinator. Auburn really not in the mix for any of the big top guys in the state of Alabama. It doesn't feel like anyway. How does that impact Alabama? And my gut feeling is that Nick Saban is very dangerous to their top recruits, to those schools, when there is turmoil like that.
Yeah, we've seen so many times, there's so many different coaches at Alabama who've, come and gone, and a lot of those coaches are now head coaches in the SEC or throughout the country. But I think Alabama has been fortunate this year to snag some really good players. You look at Aaron Anderson, who flipped his commitment from LSU to Alabama. back in the fall. And I think that was obviously a big win there for Alabama, but it was probably more due to Ed Orgeron and that staff, being let go. I mean, you saw Isaiah Bond commit to Alabama last week, and he was 100% committed to Florida in September. But once things started going south for Dan Mullen, he kind of reopened his recruitment and ends up committing to Alabama. We saw Shamar James, decommit from Florida as well. And a lot of schools are going to benefit. There's a lot of programs that benefit from coaching changes, but Alabama, they don't tend to lose too many guys with coaching changes just because you still have the same head guy. I mean, it's people want to go play for Nick Saban. A lot of other schools. There's some coordinators that you want to go play for. There's position coaches you want to go play for. There's different guys you have connections with on the staff that you want to play for. But at Alabama, it's always about Nick Saban and playing for the GOAT. So we'll see what all happens over the course of the next few days. I mean, we saw the 2 Clemson decommitments that visited Alabama this weekend after a couple coordinator changes, in Clemson this week. So that could really help impact Alabama's recruiting class. And you always kind of have to save a little bit of room in your class because you don't know what's going to happen over the course of the final month of that of the recruiting cycle, because there's always coaching changes. We see it every single year, whether that's an assistant coach at Alabama or if it's a head coach or assistant coaches at all these other schools. And Alabama certainly has reached out to other the guys that we're talking about now. These aren't just the only guys that they've reached out to. There's other guys that they've reached out to over the course of the last couple of weeks. Some of them may not have had any interest. Some have stuck with their commitments, but they've certainly reached out to a lot of different guys over the course of the last month.
All right, Bone. Well, let's get down to it then. One of the big targets out there is DeMonte Jackson. What's the latest?
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to know, where's DeMonte going? 5-star defensive back from California, was committed to USC for a long time. Decommitted after, I guess, the coaching staff had already been fired, but decommitted a couple weeks ago after the official visit to Alabama. All signs pointed to Alabama. And then obviously Lincoln Riley hired at USC, priority recruit, try to get him back on campus a few times, and he has. I mean, he visited USC last weekend. I think he's back there today on this final day before the dead period begins. So, it's hard to say. It's hard to say what's going to happen because Alabama had such a big lead for him after that decommitment, but USC's really kind of surged back into the race. I don't know if I have a prediction just yet. We're going to make final predictions, but not really tonight. We're just going to kind of let the dust settle, kind of figure out where things are. But Nick Saban had a great in-home visit with him on Tuesday night. And, there's some big defensive back targets who were out there that, Alabama chose not to go see over the course of the last week because they felt like, maybe if they landed somebody else, if they landed DeMonte Jackson, they didn't really need to go get anybody else. So we'll see how it plays out. But Alabama is still very much in the picture for DeMonte, even though he's taking these trips to USC. Could probably go either way, but if Alabama can end up landing Earl Little Jr., if they can land Dalen Everett, if DeMonte Jackson ends up going to USC, they're going to have a great defensive back class.
Alabama's done really well with guys from California. And not only that, guys from California have done really well at Alabama, including Bryce Young and Najee Harris and so many others. I'm sure that's a big recruiting tool when you're talking about DeMonte Jackson. Jaleel Skinner.
You mean DeMonte?
DeMonte, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sitting here ahead of myself here. You know where I'm going next. But anyway, when you talk about Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, the last, the Heisman Trophy winner last night played at his high school. So he spent a lot of time with him during his official visit to Alabama. So, obviously he's not going to go to Alabama just because Bryce Young won the Heisman Trophy. He would be going to Alabama because of what Alabama can do for him in terms of his development and the amount of players that they put in the league at the position. But I think it certainly doesn't hurt Alabama's recruited the state of California, extremely well. Just because Lincoln Riley's out there doesn't mean they're going to stop recruiting the state of California. They're still going to go out there. Just because Ed Orgeron won a national championship out at down at LSU a couple of years ago. Now, Alabama didn't stop recruiting the state of Louisiana. Kirby Smart goes over to Georgia. They say it's on lockdown. Best defense player in college football, Will Anderson from the state of Georgia. They haven't signed yet, but one of the best offensive linemen in the country, Elijah Pritchett from Georgia, chose Alabama over Georgia and Florida State. So, Alabama's not going to stop recruiting these, certain areas just because there's one particular coach that has come in and made a big impact or created a lot of buzz. They're still going to recruit these areas, still going to do well. So I wouldn't expect even if Alabama misses on DeMonte Jackson, doesn't mean they're going to quit recruiting Mater Dei High School. They're going to keep going out there, keep recruiting guys every single year.
He's Andrew Bone. I'm Mick Gillespie. Charlie, thank you for the super sticker. We appreciate all the super chats that you guys throw at us. Make sure you give us a thumbs up, like and subscribe to Bama Insider YouTube channel. And don't forget, Wednesday, all day long, we are going to cover recruiting all day long. We're going to be live talking about the commits as they sign and become this year's Alabama class. So just make plans to be here on Wednesday, bright and early, with Andrew Bone, Kyle Henderson, and our entire crew. All right, look, I kind of gave this away, and now I got to talk about it. Mario Cristobal moves over from Oregon to Miami. He's a recruiter. We know him, right? He's been in the neighborhood before. He's part of the tree. And right off the bat, he's trying to go after Jaleel Skinner, Alabama commitment, and Jaleel took a surprise visit to Miami. Should we be concerned, Mr. Bone?
No. Simple answer, no. Miami came in, got him to take an official visit down there. I think that's all it was, just an official visit. Don't see him flipping to Miami. I think he's 100% locked in with Alabama. Mario Cristobal came to my house or came by my school and said, "Hey, why don't you come take a visit down to Miami for the weekend, have some fun? Let me recruit you a little bit." You know what? I'd probably say, okay, I'll come down to Miami. All expense paid trip, no doubt about that. And then at the end of the day, Jaleel Skinner's been committed to Alabama, really since the summer. Has been to Tuscaloosa a handful of times. That's where he always really wanted to go once they really started making that big push for him, after he made that trip to Tuscaloosa during the summer. It was kind of all over for him. He did take that visit to Miami, said he had a great weekend, but on Wednesday, he's going to be signing with Alabama.
How about any other commitments that could be out there that we should worry about? Who and what school might get them?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, even though Jaheim Otis made a trip back to Tuscaloosa, I think everybody's still going to be watching him, even though I don't think there's really anything to worry about. I think he's pretty solid. I think he's going to sign with Alabama. But until he signs, I'm sure all Alabama fans are going to be asking me every minute, when's he signing? So, he's going to be one that we'll watch just in case. Robert Woodyard has been committed to Alabama for, over a year, from Williamson High School down in Mobile. I think he's going to end up flipping to Auburn. I'd be surprised if that doesn't happen. I just, I hadn't really seen Alabama make this, big push to hold on to him. They hadn't really visited with him. Nick Saban didn't go down and see him. He did not take an official visit to Alabama. He's been up to been up to Auburn a couple times this season. So I would say that Robert Woodyard's going to flip to Auburn. I don't think Alabama's really going to, fight to keep him on board. So that's something that, I think is going to happen this week. Walter Bobb has been a defensive line commitment since February. I think there's still some academic hurdles for him. So I don't see him signing with Alabama this week. We'll kind of go into February, see what happens there. If he ends up signing or if they end up placing him in a junior college. But those are kind of the guys that we're watching. Everybody else, I'm not really worried about anybody else flipping. Somebody asked me, is Jamarion Miller, former Texas commitment, is he in danger of maybe flipping back to Texas? I don't think that's the case at all. I think he's very solid with Alabama as well, and not really seeing anybody else in this class potentially going elsewhere.
He's Andrew Bone. I'm Mick Gillespie, and we appreciate you being here on a Sunday night to talk recruiting. National Signing Day early period is Wednesday, the early signing day, and Alabama expecting to have a big game. All right, Bone, let me ask you this now. 3 recruits you think will choose Alabama on Wednesday?
Well, put me on the spot here. I do think they're going to add more than 3 commitments, but I'll give you 3 names that I feel probably the most confident about heading into Wednesday. Maybe we'll give another name or 2 in the next couple of days. But one would be Curtis Perry, in-state defensive lineman. Had a great season for Pike Road High School. Helped them win the Class 5A state championship. 23 sacks on the season. That is some production, especially when people know who you are and people are trying to block you. That's an incredible season. I feel very confident that he's going to be in Alabama's class, even though Auburn, Clemson, UCF have all come on pretty strong for him. I think he's going to end up in Alabama's class. Second one, I will go with Ernest Green, Rivals 100 offensive lineman. He's actually the number 39 overall player in the country out of St. John Bosco High School out in Bellflower. One of DeMonte Jackson's rival high schools. So I think Alabama ends up getting Ernest Green. He's a big lineman, 6'5", about 330 pounds. This is a guy that Alabama went out and evaluated, watched him play back in October. They were able to get him in for an official visit in November, and he ends up making a trip back last week before the SEC championship game, attended the SEC championship game. Then Nick Saban went and had an in-home visit with him on Tuesday night. So I think Alabama's got a great chance there. It's an Alabama-Georgia battle. Now, he is taking an unofficial visit to USC today, but in the end, I think he ends up going to Alabama. So that would be another great offensive lineman to Alabama's class. And then the third guy that I will give you guys tonight is one of my favorite guys in this recruiting class, and that is Earl Little Jr., the Rivals 100 defensive back out of American Heritage in Plantation, Florida. A Miami legacy. Mario Cristobal went and saw him right off the bat. There was some talk that he might go to Miami this weekend for one more trip down there before making that decision. He ended up not going down there. I think it's pretty safe to say he's going to be in Alabama's recruiting class. This has been an Alabama lean for a very long time. Nick Saban went in home with him on Thursday. Coach Jay Valai, the defensive backs coach, also spent about 3 hours with Earl Little and his family. So I really like Alabama's chances. So those are my 3 for the night that I'll give you. I'm sure most Alabama fans are probably like, well, we knew that. We knew those guys were coming. But, yeah, Earl Little Jr., hold off that surge from Miami. Curtis Perry, even though he named Auburn as his leader a couple weeks ago, like Alabama's chances there. And then Ernest Green, who has really emerged late as a big target for Alabama. So those are my 3 tonight.
Bone, there's a super chat up there. Do you expect Gibbs to sign with Bama after early signing day? Thanks for all you do, Bone. And that goes for all of us here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. And guys, before Bone answers that, like, subscribe, hit the thumbs up, hit the bell so you know when we're going live. Be part of our community here on YouTube where we get after it every single day with anything going on around the program, not just football, but around the program. And don't forget, on Wednesday, we're going to be on all day long live as the commitments come in and they sign with the Crimson Tide to see if they'll have the number 1 class. All right, Bone.
Yeah, who's your mama? I appreciate that. I do think that Alabama is in pretty good shape with Jahmyr Gibbs, Georgia Tech running back who entered the transfer portal. I do think this is, Alabama's going to recruit the transfer portal pretty well this year. Everybody always wonders or worries about, hey, not signing this amount of players at this position, might miss on this guy might go somewhere else. Guys, the transfer portal is open for business. You got to remember that. This is somewhere that Alabama's going to recruit. They're going to go in. They're going to find some players. They're going to get some good talent, and they're going to get some guys who can make an impact. And we've seen that over the course of the last several years. Guys who have come in, made a big impact right away, especially this year with guys like Henry To'oTo'o and Jamison Williams. Or you can go back and look at Landon Dickerson or Jake Coker. I mean, they're going to have guys that are going to be able to come in and contribute. And I feel like Alabama's going to, Jahmyr Gibbs is a guy that they like. And I feel like he's going to end up being, going to Alabama, but he's probably not going to be the only one. There's going to be some more guys out there that they're going to heavily go after. And it all kind of depends on what happens on signing day. They're waiting to see kind of what happens when signing day comes and goes. Hey, these are the areas that we still, need to add a couple more players to. Why don't we go get somebody who's been a major contributor at, whatever university they may have been at? They've entered the transfer portal. They're good. They can contribute. They could start right away at Alabama. Let's go get them. And I think that Alabama's going to do well in that regard.
Got another super chat that just popped up. Let me throw it up there for you, Bone. That was a great rehire of Dante Williams for USC. Hopefully we can somehow still pull it out somehow.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Joseph. Absolutely. Alabama's still in it. I don't think Alabama fans need to give up just yet on DeMonte Jackson. He's still very much in play. Alabama's still recruiting him. They're still talking to him. While it might seem that USC's gained a lot of traction over the course of the last week or so with him, Alabama's still very much in it. And they haven't given up on recruiting him, and they're still talking to him every single day. So we'll see what happens.
We normally take calls on Sunday night. Bone, you want to do a couple calls before we get out of here?
Yeah, sure.
All right, throw the phone number up there, Chris. We're going to do a couple calls. We got a couple calls. We'll let you guys ask Bone a question. Hey, make sure that you just get right to it. Ask the question, and then we'll let Bone answer. And it's Sunday night. It's normally the night that we call in. So you guys, as you hang out with us, can do that right now. The phone number though is 205-850-0883. So if you want to ask Bone a question, we will take some calls here before we bust out tonight. And while we're doing that, Bone, waiting on a couple of calls, let's go back to the comments section here and picked another one up from Michael Lee. Says, do you see Bama signing a punter or a field goal kicker?
Not in this year's class. They probably will look at it in next year. They usually like to take those guys as invited walk-ons, but they'll be looking next year for a punter or field goal kicker. So not this year, just not that wasn't really in the cards for Alabama in this cycle. So next year, probably look for them, get another place kicker.
All right, let's go to the phone lines. And again, our number is 205-850-0883. We'll do a couple of calls and we'll start right here. Who's this and where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Charlie Morrison calling from Irondale.
What's up, Charlie Bone? Can you hear Charlie?
Yeah. Hey, Charlie. How you doing?
Yes, sir. Real quick. What are we going to expect from Cincinnati? From somebody who hadn't watched it? I mean, are they a good offense, good defense? Somebody who hadn't been paying attention to their team at all this year. What are we going to expect?
You want to get on?
Yeah. Look, I think we're going to expect, and thanks for the call, Charlie. We're going to expect a really good team. They're going to give Alabama some trouble. They got two guys in their secondary who are NFL guys. They're running back, and I'll let you talk about him, Bone. Jerome Ford was actually an Alabama guy. He signed with Alabama. Desmond Ritter's been great. They beat Notre Dame in South Bend. They didn't play a tough schedule. I mean, look, their schedule's as weak as anybody that's ever been in this game. But I think that they're a really, really dangerous team. They'll spread Alabama out, and the Crimson Tide are going to have to be at their best to win this game. Talk about Jerome Ford and his recruitment and then leaving for Cincinnati, Bone. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Alabama recruits a lot of running backs, just about every single year. And, Jerome's just kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit. I mean, he's probably itching to make a big impact once he gets on the field against Alabama here in the next few weeks. But I mean, I thought he was a great football player coming out of the Tampa area. Very explosive, very fast. You see that on the film. You've seen that at Cincinnati with him. I mean, he's he kind of waited his turn at Cincinnati and really has blossomed into a great player for them this season. So, I mean, I think the biggest thing between Alabama and Cincinnati is going to be, the line play. And, Alabama has these, big, physical, fast, offensive and defensive linemen, especially that defensive front. I think that's going to be a real challenge for Cincinnati to be able to block those guys. And, the game's going to be probably won in the trenches. And I think Alabama's certainly got a big leverage on Cincinnati in that regard.
I feel like the same thing too. I think Alabama's going to attack them like they did Ole Miss, where they do a lot more running than people are going to expect, and try to keep Desmond Ridder and the offense on the sideline. But we'll find out, and that'll be on New Year's Eve in Dallas. It's the early game of the 2 playoff contest, Alabama and Cincinnati wanted to play Alabama, so they get the game that they want, and we'll find out what happens there. All right, let's go back to the phone lines again on a Sunday night. Who's this and where are you calling from? And what's your question for Andrew Bone?
Good evening, guys. Roll Tide. This is Ken from Atlanta by way of Huntsville. One of my questions, actually one of my concerns most of the season is the coaching carousel at Alabama, the coaching rehab, the Nick Saban coaching rehab. My concern was who's the offensive coordinator? Is it Bill O'Brien?
Yes.
Is his name?
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, there's been some, the rumor mill has been going that he may be offered a head coaching position at the end of this year. And I was wondering, what do you guys think about that? And if that is the case, who do you see as being his replacement?
Great
Roll
call,
Tide.
Ken. Thank you. Roll Tide. All right, Bone. Yeah, it's another good question. And before we answer it, guys, make sure you like and subscribe. Hit the thumbs up as we talk to you on a Sunday night here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Previewing recruiting with Andrew Bone, talking Alabama football. We'll be on all day Wednesday, covering recruiting like no one else all day. And as the recruits come in, Bone will be on there breaking it down. Let's talk about the impact that Bill O'Brien has made on this team, Bone, recruiting wise, and what would happen if he were to take a head coaching job, which I think could happen if the right job opened. I don't really hear his name with a lot of momentum right now, but at the same time, I mean, look, the team's won the SEC championship. He's got a quarterback as a Heisman, and I feel like, with his experience in the NFL and what he did at Penn State, I mean, he could make a really good head coach somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up potentially back in the NFL. I think that's potentially an option for him. But who knows? I mean, you just never know how it all plays out. There's all these opportunities that are going to still be out there, and a lot of coaches, they're not going to take just any opportunity. They're going to wait for the right opportunity and go to a place where they can have success. So we'll kind of wait and see what happens with Bill. I mean, there's a lot of a lot of different recruits in this class that are obviously offensive players. I think he's built a really good relationship with Ty Simpson, but not going to affect his recruitment at all. It's not going to affect the wide receivers, their commitment at all. I mean, a lot of these guys are coming to Alabama because of Alabama. It's kind of like what I said earlier. I mean, we see a lot of different kids decommit from universities because of coordinators, because of position coaches. Mm-hmm. With Alabama, it's, they know they're going there to play for Nick Saban. We don't ever see really a mass exodus of commitments in Alabama's class. Now, we've seen Alabama miss on a couple of kids before, but it's not many. I mean, there's been there's been a few guys that have ended up going elsewhere because, the offense coordinator ended up leaving, 3 years in a row. We're going to end up we're going to go somewhere else. So who knows what's going to happen with Bill O'Brien, but I don't think it's going to really affect recruiting too much. Alabama's still going to be Alabama.
Yep, I agree with you. All right, last call of the night. Let's take one more, Bone, before we kind of do a couple more chats and then close it up. Who's this and where are you calling from? And what do you want to talk about tonight?
This is Rambo calling from Atlanta, Georgia.
What's up, man?
Diehard Alabama fan, but I just have one question real quick for Bone.
I'm really falling in love with Dallas Turner. I see that he always said, coming back from high school, that Will Anderson motivated him to come and play. And I'm just sick of the narrative of freshmen don't play, you don't get no burn, you don't get no playing time. And I'm just ready to see this defense next year. I'm just really excited to see these young guys. They've grown up. They got some experience this year. Bryce Young at the head of the realm next year. And I'm just ready to see them guys. And what are y'all thoughts? I just want y'all thoughts on Dallas Turner. How y'all think has he grown from watching him throughout the season? Because he's a great player.
No doubt.
Thanks. Taking Drew Sanders' spot.
Yeah, great call, Rambo from Atlanta. We appreciate it. Roll Tide, man. All right, Bone. Yeah, he's exactly right. Dallas Turner has been one of the biggest surprises of the season on that defensive line. And maybe he's not that big of a surprise because we knew he was really good, but he is really complimenting Will Anderson Jr.
Well, I'll tell you what, we knew about Dallas Turner coming out of high school, 5-star recruit. He played at American Heritage High School in Plantation, but ended up moving to Fort Lauderdale to play at St. Thomas Aquinas for his senior season. And he was coached by NFL Hall of Famer Jason Taylor, who was the defensive line coach. So that's somebody pretty good to learn from before you move to Alabama to work with the Alabama coaching staff. So, we knew that Dallas Turner had the talent, and he certainly has lived up to the hype, especially over the course, over the last couple of months. I mean, he's really starting to, fill in and get just kind of find his place. And I think Alabama fans are really excited about his future. And, he has been really great on the opposite side of Will Anderson. And, he's certainly going to be needed. I mean, he's stepped up big time over the course of the last month or so. And, the one thing about Alabama, and I hear this all the time, other coaches who recruit against Alabama, they always tell recruits that they're going head-to-head with the Crimson Tide. Hey, don't go to Alabama. You're not going to play there until you're a junior. You're not going to play there until you're a senior. Come here and make a big impact for us as a true freshman. Some recruits listen to that. It happens. Some recruits, like a Minka Fitzpatrick or a Deron Payne, who were told by other schools, hey, you're never going to play. Come here. They took that as motivation. That added fuel to their fire. You know what? I'm going to prove you guys wrong. I'm going to go to Alabama. I'm going to play as a true freshman. I'm going to make a big impact. And that's what these kids did. And you got to, I said this earlier in the show. I mean, it takes a special player to go to the University of Alabama because it's not for everybody. You're going there to work. You're going there to compete against the best of the best every single day. You're not going there. If you think you're going there just to have, fun most of the time, like Nick Saban has always said, the fun is in the winning. And Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide win a lot, and they get a lot of NFL draft picks. So that's why you go to the University of Alabama.
All right, look, I got to give a shout out. Throw that super chat back up there again from Tony in Heightstown, please. All right, Bone, I got to tell you something. I went to high school at Heightstown High for a couple years.
Oh, yeah?
Heightstown, yeah, I haven't used to live in Princeton East, Tony. I appreciate the super chat and thinking that someone way up there is hanging out with us tonight. Certainly appreciate you just as much as you thanking us. So, up there, that's in the Trenton area up in New Jersey. And Joseph wants to know about James to UGA leaning that way. Bone, I think we touched on this a little bit.
I tell you what, with Shamar James, it's kind of been up and down, up and down, up and down over the course of the last month or so, between Alabama and Georgia. I mean, he took that visit to Georgia this past weekend, and hey, if I'm a Georgia fan or a Georgia reporter, I'm probably feeling pretty good about predicting Shamar to Georgia right now because he did visit there last, but he has visited Alabama about 8 times, and this was his second visit to Georgia. So, it's hard to predict exactly what he's going to do. I mean, he's one of the top linebackers in the country, the number one inside linebacker according to Rivals.com. But, this could be one of those decisions that's going to go back and forth in his mind over the course of the next couple of days. He said on Thursday that, his mind was not made up. He was really torn between Alabama and Georgia. He's going to go to Georgia, or he went to Georgia this weekend. You could easily see Georgia maybe pulling ahead today, but what's it going to be like tomorrow? What's it going to be like on Tuesday or even on Wednesday morning when you're sitting down, when you're making those final decisions, when you're having those final conversations with your family, those final conversations, those final recruiting pitches with Nick Saban or with Kirby Smart, and then you sleep on it and say, all right, this is what I'm going to do. Just because one school might be leading today doesn't mean they're going to be leading tomorrow. And the school that's leading tomorrow may not be leading come Wednesday morning. You got to be leading on Wednesday morning. That's the most important thing. And we've seen that so many times over the course of the last few years, especially between Alabama and Georgia. We've seen it more between Alabama and Georgia than I feel like between anybody else. We saw that last year with Terry and Arnold, completely torn between Alabama and Georgia leading up until his announcement. Dallas Turner, even though he didn't announce during the early signing period, he was torn between Alabama and Georgia. A few years ago, Trey Sanders, I was told the night before signing day that Trey was going to Georgia. About an hour before his announcement on that Wednesday, I was told it's Alabama. And there was some talk about Evan Neal as well. There was some talk about Georgia with Evan Neal because he had a really good relationship with Sam Pittman. Now the Arkansas coach, who was the O-line coach at Georgia, he had a great relationship with him. There was some talk. I was more confident in Evan Neal going to Alabama than I was Trey at the time. But it's crazy how quickly things can change, how momentum can change, because those last second recruiting pitches, they get a little wild. And, it certainly a lot of kids are probably very confused right now. I would hate to be making a decision. I mean, it's great to be making a decision because you're about to go to a top university for the next, few years, and it's going to, be your school for the rest of your life. But man, you got all these college coaches that have been recruiting you for, especially guys like Shamar James, the big 5-star recruits. They've been recruited for the last couple of years. They don't want to tell any of these coaches no. They're telling coaches probably what they want to hear right now. They're going to have to make those tough decisions over the course of the next couple of days to let them know, I'm sorry, coach. I appreciate you recruiting me for the last 2 years, but I've decided that I'm going to this school. And that's going to be a tough conversation. And people just don't think about it. They think it's real easy for a kid to make a decision. It's not. It's extremely tough, especially when you have these relationships that go on for the last couple years, several months. They've taken all these visits. They've made all these different relationships, friendships. They're tight with commitments. They're tight with people who are at the university, whether that's even just students who are there, or they don't want to upset their hometown. They don't want to. All these people on social media are constantly telling them how they'll change their program, how they're the most important thing for their school, and how they can be this and that at their school. They're trying not to upset anybody. If I was a recruit, I would get off social media today, right now, not get on it until after I make, a week after I make my decision, because you're going to have all these different fans that are going to hate you for going somewhere else, and they're going to tell you about it. Unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting few days for these kids, but hopefully they can kind of block out all the noise, sit down with their family, sit down with coaches or whoever helps them make their decision, make the best decision for their future, because that's what it's all about right now.
All right, this is it, Bone. Last thing that we're going to talk about tonight, Marvin Jones Jr. coming to Bama. Got another super chat there, and then we're going to wrap it up here in the next 2 minutes. So what do you got on Marvin Jones Jr.?
You ask 5 different reporters what Marvin Jones Jr. is going to do, you're probably going to get 5 different answers. This is a Florida State legacy. Florida State, and this kind of goes back to what I was just talking about. You got all this pressure on you, especially if you're a legacy. Your dad played at this school. He was an All-American, Butkus Award winner. In the Ring of Honor. I mean, imagine being in Marvin Jones' shoes right now, trying to make a decision because you think that Alabama or Georgia might be the best situation for you in your future, but you have all this pressure on you to go to Florida State. I do think it's going to be one of those 3 schools. Now, he took an official visit to USC this past week, kind of a midweek visit. Then he visited Georgia this past weekend. I think going into the weekend, it was Alabama, Florida State. I do think Georgia is a dark horse in his recruitment because he does have some connections there. I know his family has some connections there in terms of people that they know really well from years ago. But in the end, I do think Alabama, Florida State probably end up battling it out. I like not going to say I like Alabama's chances, but the fact that Alabama has Dallas Turner on their team, and he is such a close friend of Marvin Jones. Man, they're best friends. I mean, does that help or does that hurt Alabama? We just don't know, because he knows that Will's going to be there for another year. Dallas is going to be there. Obviously a couple more years. Does he think that maybe he comes in, learns under Will, and plays on the opposite side of Dallas Turner? In the upcoming years, and becomes just this ultimate duo, but they're best friends from growing up. Earl Little Jr., who I feel like is going to end up going to Alabama. He's a teammate with Marvin Jones, so he's got that connection there. He really likes Coach Saban. Coach Salson's series done a great job recruiting him. So it's tight. I'm not ready to make a final prediction on Marvin just yet, but I can say that Alabama is definitely a strong, very strong contender in his recruitment. But a lot's going to depend on if he can withstand that, that pressure to go to Florida State.
Very interesting. All right, Andrew Bone, been a fun night, man. What do you got going on this week besides hot and heavy starting early on Wednesday, as we will right here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel cover signing day like no one else can?
Yeah, I mean, we got a lot going on. I just dropped my Sunday recruiting nuggets on BamaInsider.com, which is everything Alabama fans need to know. As of right now, where things currently stand with each remaining target. Somebody just said something about a Marion Walker from Louisiana. I've already kind of addressed that earlier in the show, saying that he didn't visit Alabama this weekend, so really wouldn't pay much attention to him. Somebody asked about Denver Harris. Alabama decided not to go in home with him this week, so wouldn't expect him in Alabama's class. But there are a lot of other guys who are out there. There's not a lot of spots left. We're going to have it all covered on BamaInsider.com. So visit us, visit the website, go check out the recruiting nuggets from today, ask questions, get all the info. I'm on there every single, pretty much every single hour. So if you have you don't just have to come on this show to get the recruiting answers that you seek. You can go to BamaInsider.com. You can ask right away. You can ask at 2 a.m. in the morning. Sometimes I'm up. I got an infant child that's up late at night. So sometimes I get on the site, look at it, answer questions late at night. So, hey, jump on the show or jump on the site this week. It's going to be a lot of fun.
All right, guys, tomorrow we've got Monday Night Quarterback. We'll have Jay Barker's show from noon until 2, so you can watch that. Jay Barker's radio show, our buddy, the championship quarterback from Alabama, and now radio host for many years. And then at 6 o'clock tomorrow night, it'll be Tony Tsoukalas and me scheduled to talk about Alabama. And there are so many different things going on right now. Bama back in the playoffs, SEC champs, Bryce Young, Heisman Trophy winner. And then on Wednesday, we've got the recruiting signing day extravaganza. All of that coming up. Please like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. That's a great way of saying Roll Tide tonight. Hit the bell so you know what's going on with our channel. And also special thanks to Chris Daughtry behind the scenes making things happen. And for Andrew Bone, I'm Mick Gillespie. Thanks for hanging out with us on a Sunday night. Big Wednesday coming up. And to keep you updated on everything going on, make sure you stay tuned to Bama Insider and BamaInsider.com. Roll Tide, everybody. Good night.